Sam, and I'm making this video about the solar eclipse in Aquarius that's happening on February 26th. Now, this is quite a powerful eclipse, as they all are. We can definitely see a lot of the effects of this eclipse in Aquarius, as we see a lot of the themes of Aquarius which have to do with social uprising, the citizens of a country, whereas Leo, the opposite, is like the king and the government. We're seeing this kind of backlash, you might say, in the country, in the US and in the world, with a lot of protests and a lot of social uprising. The people want to be heard. Whereas we're coming out of the cycle of Leo, where this strong, like, central government, even perhaps potential authoritarian king sort of energy was prominent. We can see where we just had an election in the US and we have a president who is this strong figure of, like, we're in charge, I'm in charge, government is powerful, we're going to do what we want, we were elected, we're going to do it. I talked about these themes for a year when Rahu went into Leo at the end of 2015 and joined Jupiter. I talked about this. It was a time of potential authoritarianism and a strong kind of, king kind of energy. Rahu in Leo is that kind of energy. Wherever Rahu is, that end of the node gets much more attention, because Rahu is that ascending part of the node where we're heading toward that thing. And we need to be careful. So the Rahu in Leo is about what kind of power do we want? What is the true power? What is the true power of the government, of the kingdom? And so we saw this all last year during the election cycle in the US. Now we have the eclipse in the opposite end, which is the Aquarius pole. And whereas Leo is the power of the king, literally, like the power of the king, the power of the government, they are the ones that have the military arsenal and the weapons and the power to make laws. But the opposite end of that is Aquarius, which are the people. And the people ultimately have the numbers. And so we're seeing now this swing of the pendulum toward the people. And that includes the people who either voted for the current administration or voted against them. The people are speaking out. The people are making their voices heard. In the US, we've had a lot of protests against the current president, and now you're seeing people show up to protest against the protesters. So either way, things are, people's voices are being heard. It's called democracy, and democracy is related to Aquarius. Democracy is Aquarius. If you want to understand the higher qualities of Aquarius, it's democracy. Now, it's not just democracy in a government, it's the democratization of whatever we're talking about. And Leo is the centralization, or the centralized power of whatever we're talking about. So when we're talking on a more individual level, to take it out of the worldly political, on a more individual worldly level, the cycle of Rahu in Leo, Ketu in Aquarius has been a time of your individual, personal power. And where does your true power lie? What does it lie in? Where does it lie? And how can you best share it? That's the highest Leo principle, sharing the power of the kingdom with those who benefit from it. Every axis has its culminating point or harmonizing point in the opposite. The power of Leo must be harmonized with the power of Aquarius. So in the previous example, the power of the king and the kingdom must be connected with the people. Sometimes kings think they That's not necessary. Well, now I'm in power, I'll do what I want. Yeah, try that for a while. It used to work for a while. But then the citizens rise up. Think about this in your own life. You are the center of power in one way or another. You have individual power. How do you use it? Or do you abuse it at times? Are you generous with those who are above you and below you? Or are you just generous with those who are above you because they have more power than you, and the people that are below you, you're hostile and abusive and dismissive to? And those who are in a neutral plane you're competitive with. Where are you on this scale of Leo generosity? Because that will also tell you where you are on the scale of Aquarian generosity or subservience. Aquarius is a sign of service, and it can be very noble service. By the way, nobility is Leo. When it's noble service, we're serving because we want to serve, because our individuality, which is Leo, and that thing that inspires us to show up consistently in light and strength, Leo, has decided that my personal power, light, and strength is best utilized in service of something bigger than me. Again, just like with Leo, the highest Leo is I can use all my power for the good of everyone, Aquarius. Aquarius is I can serve because that's what really fills me up the most. The other option with Aquarius is servitude. And I'm not serving because it's really the thing that turns me on. I'm serving because I don't know what else to do. I don't have the power to stand up and shine as an individual. I guess I'll be of service because I've tried to win and I can't. I just keep getting defeated. So what else can I do? But, quote, serve. But then underneath the service, there's rage. There's rage at having failed themselves as an individual. And by the way, this means no disrespect to people like in yoga ashrams or yoga communities or whatever, but you'll see quite a bit of this in those communities. A lot of people of service, but many of them feel like servants rather than of service to something higher. Servitude is not the same as service. And then there's nothing wrong with being a servant or in servitude or whatever, if you understand it correctly. But the difference is, what we need to be aware of with Aquarius is to not get into this kind of humble servitude illusion, thinking, oh, I'm just so humble, when actually that's not what's happening. The person is not so humble. They're afraid to step up and be recognized and seen. They're afraid to stand in the middle of all the attention that comes our way once we step up and stand for something. You say one thing you can always say about Leo energy. Leo is always willing to stand up and face the incoming. Now, why they're doing it, there's a whole bunch of reasons. They could be doing it because they're really connected to their conviction, or because they just want power and to dominate others. And so this unintegrated part of Aquarius is that Leo part. So this eclipse right now is showing the uprising in service. We can see it socially, in service to something bigger. We see it, like, let's say, with protests now, at least in the U.S., which, a lot of the world is watching what's happening in the U.S., frankly. So it's appropriate to talk about it. We see the current administration passing these executive orders to ban immigration, now to start massively deporting people. It's not just those who would be hurt by this who are showing up to protest. Not to mention other things like the healthcare, and just in general protesting the perception and also the cabinet that this person has put in place, where people don't seem qualified, or their whole qualification is that they're against the position itself, and all kinds of stuff. So we see this playing out in that situation in the world. In U.S. politics, we definitely see it. And on the other side, you see people coming out advocating that choice as well, and protesting the protesters, as I said. But on a more personal level, this is about that quality of service in your life. What are you serving? What is bigger than just you and your own individual glory? So your own individual glory is related to Leo. And saying your own individual glory is not an insult. You're supposed to be glorious, but you're supposed to be glorious to something that's not just about your personal identity, because the personal identity is an illusion. This is why when someone's glory revolves around their personal identity, it results in disaster for everybody, because it's an illusion, it's not real. And so, how are you showing up in service now? What are you in service to and for? Aquarius is aligned with larger social causes and themes, things that are going to outlive you. Again, maybe it's something political, maybe it's something spiritual, something scientific. We're seeing a lot of scientific breakthroughs and discoveries. We've had some interesting things with the rockets, exo rocket, or whatever it's called, I don't remember. We just discovered exoplanets around a new star. All of these are very Aquarian and Ketu kind of themes. It's the sun being eclipsed by Ketu. And so Ketu is very much about kind of finishing things, finishing a certain worn out paradigm. Again, think of it in your life. What power structure and ego illusion is being destroyed right now? Because Rahu is in Leo, going that way, and now Ketu is eclipsing the sun, saying, in order to really understand yourself at the next level of power, which is Leo, you need to destroy this illusion. So what illusion is being destroyed right now? And again, you'll know how this works based on your ascendant, exactly what's being destroyed based on your ascendant. And if you want to know what that is, you can join my member site if you're not part of the Astrology Training Lab, only 50 cents. And you can hear me talk about that on Friday of this week. I'll talk about that for all 12 signs, go in great depth and detail about how this eclipse will affect you and what you're trying to destroy in order to fully embody your power. It's incredibly important. So it's happening in the nakshatra of Shatabishak, which literally means 100 physicians, 100 doctors, 100 medicines. And it's the nakshatra where we need to find a great mystical solution to our problems. Because we've tried to find normal solutions and they don't work. We need to think outside the box to find the cure for what ails us. We can see this in the world in the example that I used. I don't need to even reaffirm that. So it's time to think outside the box. It's time to consider alternative methods and therapies and ways of healing. It's ruled by the god Varuna, which is the god of the sky and the celestial river in the sky. Celestial river, right? There was a lot of metaphors in the Vedas of rivers. And celestial water, of course, one quality of celestial water is rain. And Varuna was the deity related to the moon and the celestial rain, which forms into clouds and that governs that kinetic energy of heaven, which then comes down as lightning, as a lightning strike. We feel the lightning strike more in Purva Bhadrapada, the next nakshatra, but here in Shatabishak, there's the pulsation of static electricity and kinetic energy in the upper atmosphere. That's a great catalyst for change. So you can understand that Shatabishak Nakshatra is where, in the collective mind and consciousness, which is the atmosphere, and which is Aquarius. Aquarius is the sort of collective citizens and consciousness that joins them, the ideas, because it's an air sign, that join people, that join cultures, the collective ideas that we all have. And in the upper atmosphere, in the consciousness of the collective, there's this need for alternative solutions to entrenched problems that can destroy us. And there's a futuristic longing and projection. We're projecting far into the future now with urgency. On both sides, let's say if we're talking politics, both sides. The progressives see this way, the conservatives might see that way. This world vision of like nationalism or multiculturalism, globalism. You see these worldviews on the battlefield on the entire earth. Again, as I talked about last year. So we can see that, and in your mind and in your life, it's the same way. This is what Shatabishak is, 100 doctors, 100 medicines. So people who have planets there are often alternative thinkers. They connect with the collective consciousness. They feel this need to serve. They are good at alternative therapies and solutions like Ayurveda, astrology, all of that. So it's a very metaphysical, mystical nakshatra. And that god Varuna is also the god of the seasons, where the rhythms of nature and the cycles of nature correspond. Separation of night into day, this season to that season, and living in harmony with cosmic law. Varuna was quite a venerated deity in the Rig Veda and in the Vedas, which is where the nakshatras come from. So a couple other things here is we also have Mercury in Aquarius at this time, which is showing all of the communication, the excited communication, a lot of organized communication. We see it in the protests. I'm going to come back to that because it's very reflective of this. It's a paradigm. We haven't seen this before. For example, with congressmen and people in the U.S. in our political landscape, you see congressmen going back to have a town hall meeting. Couldn't be more Aquarius than that. And you have thousands of people showing up, shouting down the policies of the administration and what these senators are behind, and congressmen shouting down that they're not holding the current president accountable for what is seen as gross violations, conflicts of interest, not to mention policies. I'm not going to get into politics, but these are the things. And they're very organized. Signs, they're organized and they're making their voices heard, which is Mercury. Very close to this eclipse, very prominent and important. Also, Saturn is aspecting from Sagittarius. As I said, Saturn moved into Sagittarius right at the end of January. No longer are we going to be manipulated through our fear. It's finished, done. And I said at the time, those who try to continue to manipulate us through fear are going to have a world of hurt, a world of trouble. And Saturn in Sagittarius is showing it since the end of January. And you're seeing it in people's individual sense of justice. You're literally seeing it in the Justice Department, in the courts. Judgments are being rendered, and we're no longer going to be manipulated by what scares us, which is Saturn and Scorpio, but we're going to insist on what inspires us. So those putting forth a dark, draconian vision are going to be met with enormous resistance, because we are looking toward what inspires us, not what we're afraid of. That aspect is right there the whole time. We also have very prominent Mars, Venus in Pisces, exalted Venus, join Mars in Pisces. So a lot of this Pisces energy, which underneath it all there's a sense of hope that progress is being made. There's also an aesthetic beauty that's possible now in the midst of all this. There's enormous devotion to higher causes and to humanity in general, and the desire to embrace our brethren, whether we agree with them or not. It still seems like there's a lot of rancor socially, but it's a lot less. You're seeing actually on both sides. It's not as much as it was during the political season even. A lot of coming together. It's early. There's still a lot of excitement around it, but you're seeing a lot of desire to connect on a human level. And individually, of course, exalted Venus shows where we could be experiencing a lot of beauty in our relationships, but Mars has been there showing some dissent as well, or mainly disconnect. So even though there's this longing for joy and beauty and this feeling of romance and happiness and creativity, Mars has still been there, which is maybe still keeping this break, this individual willfulness, or maybe just like hard work or other things that are maybe keeping us from surrendering and relaxing with our beloved. Those things are about to change. Mars is about to go into Aries, which will be, at least he won't be join Venus anymore, but he's going to show. When Mars goes into Aries in a few days, you're going to see some explosiveness ratcheted up a little bit. The other thing is that this Mars is aspected by Jupiter retrograde in Virgo. So we're seeing this Virgo Pisces Mars Jupiter aspect happening, which again we're reflecting on what inspires us, which is Jupiter, and it's aspected by Mars saying, and it ain't this, and it better change. I'm ready to go to town on those who are trying to manipulate me through fear. So Mars aspecting Jupiter retrograde in Virgo, Jupiter and Virgo were reflecting on the details of what inspires us. Reflecting retrograde details, Virgo inspires us, Jupiter. And Mars is aspecting saying, and don't try to manipulate me or whip me into shape or give me some kind of half-brained explanation about it. I'm frustrated and angry about it. I'm angry about being manipulated by whatever. And in all fairness, on the other side, you have the other side feeling like maybe the media is the real enemy that's manipulating people. In fact, obviously, this has been something that the current President of the United States has done. He's waged war with the media, which, again, this is very much like a Jupiter and Virgo. He's playing these games. Let's see what happens. But he's also waged war with the intelligence agencies, the Justice Department. Frankly, anybody who disagrees with him is the enemy. The voting system, you have to decide whether or not that's the vision that you want to support. This is what we're deciding. So, again, I'll just reaffirm that if you want to know how this influences your sign, it's very important eclipse, obviously. I have a group called the Astrology Training Lab. Daily forecasts. Usually there's twice a week check-ins. Sometimes it goes back and forth. But there's usually pretty constant updates. Then there's 8 hours of classes that you get when you register. There's these new moon and full moon forecasts. This is a new moon forecast which happens twice a month. When we have the new moon and the full moon, I explain it for each of the 12 signs because that's the important factor. And also, of course, I describe them for each of the 12 signs, including yours and the people in your life. So I have people that have been members for years. So you can try it for only 50 cents for 2 weeks. And you can cancel at any time and you wouldn't be charged a regular member fee, which is about $1 a day. And for that, again, you get daily forecasts based on the Rashi, the Nakshatra, the Tithi, the Yogas, the aspects. So you're free to check that out as well. Either way, stay cool in this Aquarius eclipse.